everybody, this is Chuck Rowe from MSG. Thanks again for joining us for another webinar. Today, we're going to spend a little time not only talking about grassroots nonprofits, but specifically talking about creating a business side of a nonprofit. Sarah's joining me today. Thanks for joining me, Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
So we're in the middle of Iowa, and you're about to finish your, let's think of years and years and years ago. You finish high school, you're going to go to college. Did you ever think you were going to be running a pie store?
Mm-mm. For sure, no. I'm not even sure if I knew what I was going to do at that point, but definitely not a pie shop.
Now, those of us in Iowa, and specifically maybe in the Cedar Valley area, know what Tri-Pie is, but for those who don't, maybe you could explain a little bit about what Tri-Pie is and what you do.
Yeah. We are a teen employment program for high school girls. We hire students from Waterloo and Cedar Falls, Iowa, to make pies kind of the first job experience. And then we use work as an opportunity to equip them with different skills relating to financial literacy, job skill development. We have a faith component, and then talk a little bit about community and cultural diversity. So we pair time in the kitchen with time in the classroom and one-on-one mentorship. And then we have committees as kind of another component of how they can get kind of involved in some of the behind-the-scenes part.
So when you think about, because how many years have you been doing this now, Tri-Pie?
We started late 2013, early, like January of 2014.
Okay, so have you gone through a round now where kids have actually graduated from high school yet?
Yeah, we had students, when we first started, we didn't have a ton of structure to the process that students went through as far as like a 3-year program or a 2-year program. They just kind of participated for a semester. So we had students graduating pretty quick in the beginning, but now we actually just had this past May students who started with us as freshmen graduate as seniors for the first time all the way through.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. And because years ago when you guys started this program, how did Tri-Pie even come into existence? Like, whose idea was it? How did it come into formation?
Yeah, a lot of listening. I feel like the story of Tri-Pie's beginning has these layers to it. So Tri-Pie, the idea and the values that kind of bolster the program happened through relationships that started long before Megan or I were around. There was a partnership between Orchard Hill Church and Harvest Vineyard Church. One is in Cedar Falls, Iowa. One's in Waterloo, Iowa. And they just did a lot of neighborhood strengthening programs and events within the neighborhood. And then they did a survey in 2011 of the neighborhood neighbors, and parents said they wanted things for their kids to do after school, and kids said they wanted jobs and an income. So at that point, they kind of gathered some of the girls that they knew were getting ready to look for their first job and said, we know that a job is valuable. We want you to have the opportunity to work. What if we started a business and had you have that work experience and then paired that with some programming that could equip you in other areas that we know are going to be really important? And so they were into that idea, and we asked them, like, well, what business should we start? What should that look like? And through their own version of market research, which was a lot of chats with local leaders and businesses around town, they kind of landed on pie. So that first semester was very like after school program structure. So they had classroom times that they would attend after school occasionally, and then it all kind of accumulated to the pie making day at the end of the semester for like Easter pies. At that point, I was studying business and nonprofit management at UNI and started to really get excited about the nonprofit social enterprise structure and that overlap between business and ministry. And that was just good timing for where Tri-Pie was at. So since that like first semester, we started to really integrate the work and the learning alongside each other.
Well, and when you guys started, I know you said, you and Megan, who is also involved in this, but when you guys first started, there were some people that got some of the process along the way, as you mentioned. How much time was there between? Because obviously you didn't just open a door and say, okay, we're selling pies. Um, was it like how many months did it take, or years even, or how much time did it take to figure out? You mentioned there was a survey. You mentioned that there was a market study. You mentioned that you had to have some people from both churches talk with each other. Like, how long did that process take, just for the planning, before you could make your very first pie?
Well, 2011 was the survey, and that wasn't done for the purpose of Try Pie. It was really just an opportunity to position Orchard and Harvest and the nonprofit they formed together called Link Christian Community Development, to position all of them to just listen to what the neighbors were looking for. So 2011 was the survey. Just as we kind of continued to listen, the response then closer to 2014 then was to gather the group of girls. And then we just moved into the storefront. Oh gosh, what year is it? 2020. 2020 is lasting forever. I think it would have been 2018. We've been in the store for a little over a year and a half now. So
Okay.
quite a stretch.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just amazing to hear your story and how you guys have grown over the years. When it comes to running a business, and being able to learn, not just like how to make the pies, but you're also teaching the business sense of how to run a business, profit, expenses, things like that to the youth. So there's that obvious kind of stuff. But what kind of soft skills do you think these kids are learning from working with you?
I think there's some of the basic ones that you could probably get from any job. So like problem solving and showing up on time and communication. Sorry, everyone's just getting back from the food truck, so we've got some action happening here, but focused. So those soft skills I think could develop at any job. I think what Try Pie offers as far as soft skills that maybe wouldn't be as easily developed in your typical after-school job would be the relational aspect. So a lot of these girls are working alongside students that they maybe wouldn't otherwise interact with. We do talk a little bit more specifically about identity. So that's kind of where our faith component plays in. We talk about how everyone is created with unique gifts and skills, and try to give them opportunities to discover and develop those. So yeah, basic job skills, but then just like another step beyond to help them not just know what to do, but know who they are.
Sure, sure. And when you think of the fine line, like because if you were going to a restaurant, for instance, and your food didn't turn out right, you might say something to somebody, right? And say, hey, my burger is cold or whatever, right? But with the pies and you being a nonprofit, is there a fine line between trying to act like a business and then also reminding customers like, hey, just remember this is a nonprofit? Like, where's that fine line where you could, differ between the two?
That's a good question. I think when we first started, we were mostly doing sales at those two churches I mentioned, and so there was a lot of grace. But that being said, from the beginning, I think one of the things we communicate to the girls is that we have an opportunity to provide an excellent product to our customers, and that is a form of service that we can like show them that we care about them by being sure that our product is consistent and quality. So I think we really work to not have those kinds of like, sorry, kind of thing. But when they happen, people are gracious, and I think that happens in normal businesses too. So, we might forget some instructions for baking, and then they message us, and we're like, so sorry, thanks for your patience, here's the instructions. But we really ask the girls to kind of rise to that expectation and understand that as a business, you do have to help customers know what to expect and not discredit that.
Well, when you talk about how you first started in the churches, I mean, I remember that you guys would, um, it would just be like the church kitchen. You guys were making pies pretty much. Um, Now you see your pies in grocery stores. How surreal is that for you when you walk down a grocery store aisle and you see your pies there?
It's weird. It's exciting. I mean, I think of our students as leaders in the community, and so when I see their pies at Hy-Vee or at Hanson's Dairy, it's like I think of the pride that the girls take when they see that too. But it's interesting looking back on like how we arrived at those different steps of growth in terms of wholesale distributors. It's just really made sense. Like it felt like a big deal, but it also was like a very logical next step for us to be able to produce more pies, which meant that we could give the girls more hours, which meant we could potentially hire more students. And so it's surreal when you look at it, and then if I step back and remember that process, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like we need to be doing this to be able to do what we do and grow. So it's interesting.
Well, with you and Megan being the boss ladies there, maybe you could tell me about the transitions and the feelings that you guys had. And I don't know, stress maybe went along with it. I couldn't tell you. You tell me. But when you guys were working out of the church and making these frozen pies for people, and now all of a sudden, everybody has heard of you guys. And now you go to these events and nonprofit events and this and that, and you guys are being given awards and grants, and everyone's heard of you. How has that changed? How has that changed your organization as far as being in front of people, getting more attention, marketing different things like that?
I think we've kind of raised some professionalism. Our branding has gotten a little more consistent, I would say. We have some colors that the girls picked out when we moved to the store. We knew we needed t-shirts because you need t-shirts if you're getting official. And so they picked out the colors for those and kind of the color scheme of the store, and that kind of naturally led to like, okay, these are like our colors. This is our brand and that stuff. Otherwise, I think a lot of the principles, and part of why I think we've been able to make the transition relatively smoothly to the store is because we did have that space at Orchard to develop a business that was ready to take that step and a program that was ready to take that step.
Well, I love that you say the word ready, because I was curious about when you compare needs against wants. How hard is it to determine what you need at the moment and what maybe you wanted? So you guys are really patient, for instance, about not jumping into going into a storefront right away. You house somewhere else, or how tough is it not to get the best of the best oven or the best of the best, whatever, computer, even like anything. Like how hard is it as a startup to kind of stay in control with needs against wants?
These are great questions, Chuck. I like these questions. That's something that Megan and I try to like touch on when we speak at different places of, what is your mission and what do you need to accomplish that? And if you can keep that focus, then it's kind of surprising how much you can do to do what you're hoping to without adding all the different stuff. And so I think just because the students were such a priority and we knew that we had what we needed to be able to do as much as we could for as long as we could in the church kitchen. And then we really only started to consider actually moving to the storefront. It wasn't something that we started and like planned on moving towards the storefront. It was something that we were just doing in the kitchen at the church, and then kind of arrived at some different barriers that were getting in the way of our growth, getting in the way of the offerings that we were able to make to the girls. And so then a storefront was the solution to those problems and really became a need. So I think just pacing yourself and understanding that until it's a need, you don't need it, which is a hard lesson to learn in life in general as individuals, but I think it's critical if you want to be a startup nonprofit, especially.
Yeah, and the thing is, it just sounds so stupid, but it's so obvious, and people don't do it, right? You like
Yeah,
you don't need something until you need it, right? I mean, it's basically what you
yeah.
just said. So
And don't get me wrong, like it was hard. It was really hard at different points, especially towards the very end where we're like, this would be great, but like we're fine. It's working fine. But yeah, I think just it really is just keeping your focus on the purpose that you have, and yeah, until you need to redirect your resources to be able to do more of that. It was an interesting transition as we started like spending a lot of money on the store, and a lot of our time in the process of like renovating. It was a old historical office or something, so making it into a kitchen and a storefront was quite the process and took a lot of our time. So I think there was a period that it felt kind of funny to be putting all of a sudden so much money and so much of Megan and I's time towards something that we believed would be impactful to our mission, but was still a little bit detached.
mhm.
And so, but now being in the store, it's like, this is what's the right move.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Because would you find, did you, I mean, you kind of touched upon it a second ago, but as a startup nonprofit, you're really involved doing everything. You're involved in the program, but then you're also leading the nonprofit. But as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, do you notice that your time is spent a little bit less in the actual programming of things and more into like the administrative side of things?
yeah, I think we used to spend more time in the kitchen with the girls during the shifts. Now we just have a lot more office stuff to do and keep up with. And we're doing a better job than we first did, probably, to be honest. There's just such a learning curve with different requirements and just best practices that we just had to learn as we went. So now I think we're in a better position to be able to give some of our time to that. But we still find ways to we're still pretty connected to the girls and see them every day. I mean, our office is here at the store, so I wouldn't say we're detached, but it's definitely changed.
Yeah, and something that other people who are watching this that they need to remember is that you're running like a real business. I mean, even though you're a nonprofit, it's a real business. So you can't just like make pies and throw them out there. I mean, you have to go you still need the health department to visit. You still need the fire department to come in and do inspections. I mean, you need to have the kitchen set up professionally in a commercial background. I mean, you can't just like throw things together just because you're a nonprofit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And there's a lot of overlap. I think more overlap than people maybe would guess between business functions and requirements and nonprofit. There's some like tweaked differences, but I think social enterprise as a model for a nonprofit, especially youth development and focusing on work, is totally doable for people who are currently in the nonprofit sector.
So let me finish off with three last questions for you, okay? So the first one is in regards to donors. You guys are so unique, and what is it that donors find really special about you guys as far as your whole enterprise model?
I think the fact that our program is pretty holistic, so we're not just addressing one specific need, we're making space for students to have access to a variety of resources, like I mentioned, their work or finances or personal development. But there's also the freedom for that student to kind of self-identify what is most needed for them. So because our students are so diverse, not all of our students have the exact same needs. And so TriPi is set up in a way that can kind of tailor to what the needs of the specific student is on top of the foundational offerings. So I think people get excited about that. And then I think people generally do actually appreciate our financial structure of having a revenue stream through pie sales that creates some sustainability and flexibility. That's kind of something to like explain and hash out with donors, but in the end, I'd say most of the time it's like something that's exciting and feels like a worthwhile investment.
Well, big question number two. When it comes to board members, having board members at an established nonprofit, some of the things that you need from them, some of the personality traits, maybe some of the job duties, things like that, might be different than when you need to start a board from scratch and get something going. And where you guys have been around not even 10 years yet, so you're not as established as like some other names out there. So the point being is, what do you look like? What do you look for? Sorry, in a board member for a startup nonprofit?
Startup, a lawyer would be helpful. Someone with some finance backing. I think we kind of looked at both our values and then who was already like involved and excited. So we have some board members that represented both those two churches that I mentioned, a city council person who is involved with the neighborhood that we were initially drawing students from. Yeah, I think that if we were to start a startup nonprofit in a different way than we did, like if we didn't kind of come out of almost the structure of the church with different resources, with like, I would ask our church accountant, how do I actually file taxes and do payroll and stuff? And he was really helpful, and he's on our board too. But if we didn't have that like kind of set up, like easy to identify people, I think it would have been more difficult. So anyway, finance, lawyer, somebody who's excited about your mission and understands the need that you're trying to meet directly. So like they might have experienced it. We needed someone who knew how to make pie.
That's helpful. That would probably be helpful. So,
yeah.
The point being is you were very strategic about who was on your board. Then you didn't just say, "Oh, who are 6 people that are friends of mine that we would have fun together." I mean, you actually had to strategize of purposefully, and that's something that a lot of startups struggle with. Is that oftentimes they'll just find 6 good friends and say, "Hey, you're on our board," but you were actually strategic about it.
Yeah. I think that we're at, so we've started as a program underneath a different nonprofit. And so since we've, in the last year, broken off and become our own separate 501c3 nonprofit, we're kind of revamping our board. So we're kind of in that stage again of, now that we actually know what we are looking like and how our structure is going to be now that we're in the store, we're able to kind of revisit that who needs to be on our board question. So it's a funny time to have that question asked of us because it didn't necessarily feel super strategic in the beginning, but I agree that that's a good idea. And so now we're trying to do that again.
Well, here's the last-ish question for you. I might sneak in one more, but here's the last-ish question for you. Number 3 is, even though your guys' story is really great, you probably had some failures along the way as far as, starting a business, an enterprise. If there was one mistake that you learned from that you would like to give advice to somebody else who's starting something similar, what would that advice be?
Personally, Megan might have a different answer to this question. She's now here with me. Hi, friend. Oh. We have a student who's coming in and getting hired, so she's filling out some of the employment form paperwork. But or she's here with us, guys.
Hey, nice to join us.
Sorry, I'm so late. Go, Megan, go. I think advice, especially if you're a nonprofit who's trying to address a population that you aren't a part of. So like we hire a diverse group of teen girls, and one of the students, I don't relate to their background. We don't have a similar race or socioeconomic growing up, just a lot of different factors. And I think it's important to have leadership in your organization that reflects the students that you serve. We're blessed to have a diverse board and a great set of volunteers that kind of help us keep our eyes and ears open to learning as we go. But I do think that's something I wish we would have had a little stronger in the beginning, is leadership that reflected the population that we're serving. So that's advice. As they pause, if you feel like you're growing too fast and everybody who is with you on whatever business you're starting looks and lives like you, and you're serving somebody who looks entirely different, then like might need to take a minute and listen a little longer.
So Megan, the question was, based on a failure or a mistake or whatever that may have happened over the years, what's one thing you learned from that you would like to give advice on right now to other similar folks wanting to do similar things as you?
Oh, man. I think a struggle that we've had along the way is just balancing like mission and programming with like business growth. So I don't know that I have like succinct advice from that, but I think that's a tension that we've always felt, and I think at times we've fallen too far one way or the other. So I think that's just kind of the constant dance of a social enterprise structure. And I think there's so much value and good and beautiful things that happen in this structure, and I think we've really grown to love it. But I think having people to help like keep those different pieces in check and like help correct you if you're falling too far into one realm or the other. But I think that that's something that we're always trying to keep our eye on.
Okay. And I don't want you to say anything you're going to regret or that's supposed to be a secret or anything like this, okay? So say what you want to say that you feel comfortable saying. But from each of you, just really quickly, what is one dream of the future that you each have for Tribe High?
Oh man, I feel like we're constantly coming up on a dream.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like our food truck, like we finally feel like we like that was a dream for a long time, and we like met that. So I feel like I'm just personally in that like dream for a moment phase before like figuring
That's
out
fair.
what the dream to tackle is. Mm-hmm. So this feels like a really good spot. You know, when we came in, we signed a lease for like 5 years, and so I feel like that's kind of been our like aim, is that like 5 years mark. And at that point, our goal is to have 20 students in the program when we reach 5 years. And so I think that that's like a constant goal that we're growing towards. And we've been able to add 2 positions each year since we've been in there. So that feels good to be on track with that goal. I think I'm just excited to continue to see where students end up and have them hopefully come and reconnect with us. I was just on the food truck, and an old student just came by and got a pie shake. So it's just like those moments, I think, bring me a lot of joy just to see where they are and what they're doing. So I don't have a necessary, I just hope that they're, you know, confident in who they are and growing and have a desire to stay connected with them, with us, because we really love them. That's what I was going to say, was that we could, now that we kind of have our like structure and students are going through the program without a change every other semester, I'm excited to have students continue to come back and like maybe jump in and volunteer, be a part of our leadership even, and from more of a like programming business side, I hope to like kind of track that progress and figure out how to measure the impact long term, because any kind of relational, long-term transformational ministry program, whatever, takes a lot of time to see some like kickback of impact. So I'm excited about that. I think it's impactful, but more time will tell.
Well, that's great. And if people want to learn more about you, they could find your website at.
Trypie.org, TRYPIE,
Okay.
and then Facebook and Instagram.
Great, great. And so, Sarah, it was great talking with you for the past half hour or so. Megan, you had a great answer that last 2 minutes. So it was you kind of made up for not having the same amount of time, Sarah. But anyways, I think everyone that ends up watching this, they'll all agree that the both of you do an amazing job at TriPie. It's a great story, and I think both of you are an encouragement. There's so many out there, so other nonprofits that are trying to do something maybe similar throughout the entire Midwest that might want to do something just like you guys. I think your story shows that it can be done. So I just wanted to thank you for being part of us.
Thanks for that encouragement.
Thanks, yeah.
So, and then for everyone else, thanks for joining. Again, this is Chuck Rowe from MSG. Catch you next time.